Have you ever said something you instantly regretted? Maybe a word slipped out in anger. Maybe you reacted to gossip. Maybe you responded to someone trying to provoke you. And in that moment, everything changed. Relationships cracked, opportunities vanished, respect was lost. What if I told you that the most powerful thing you could do in those moments isn't to speak, but to stay completely silent? Silence isn't weakness, it's control, it's strategy. It's a shield that protects your peace, your reputation, and your power. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 situations where your words could cost you everything, and why silence can save it all. When anger rises within us, it feels like a fire that demands release, like a storm that needs to break. In that moment, our mind begins to justify, to rationalize, to convince us that speaking, shouting, or lashing out is necessary, that it is the only way to defend ourselves, to assert our worth, to protect our pride. But the truth is, anger is a deceiver. It is a voice that whispers, say this, do this, prove yourself, while clouding your judgment, distorting reality, and amplifying consequences. When we speak in anger, we rarely speak our truth. We speak our impulsivity, our hurt, our wounded ego, and those words, once spoken, cannot be unspoken. Words released in anger have a way of embedding themselves in memory, leaving scars on relationships, reputations, and even on our own sense of self. Anger pushes us toward reactions that later become regrets. It convinces us that the heat of the moment is more important than the long-term peace that comes from restraint. Silence, in contrast, is a shield. It allows the storm to pass without destruction. It gives time for reflection, and it ensures that when we do speak, our words come from clarity, not from chaos. Choosing silence in moments of anger does not mean weakness. It is, in fact, a demonstration of extraordinary strength. It is the power to resist the immediate gratification of venting and to prioritize what truly matters: the preservation of dignity, the protection of relationships, and the safeguarding of our own emotional balance. In those moments, the instinct to respond may feel urgent, almost uncontrollable, but the wise understand that the pause between provocation and reaction is where mastery is forged. That pause is where we regain control over ourselves, where we separate the message from the impulse, and where we decide whether speaking will build or destroy. Anger can be insidious because it disguises itself as righteousness, convincing us that our words are justified, that our points must be made, that our voice must be heard immediately. Yet, more often than not, the words we utter in anger are disproportionate, unnecessary, and harmful. They can escalate conflict, harden opposition, and entrench misunderstandings. When anger tempts us to speak, it is crucial to remember that restraint is not surrender. Silence is a choice, an active decision to step away from the edge of impulsivity and to let reason regain its seat. It is the understanding that the value of our words is diminished when filtered through the lens of fury, and that those words, once unleashed, may inflict wounds that cannot easily be healed. In personal relationships, words spoken in anger can leave lingering tension, eroding trust and intimacy. A harsh sentence, a critical remark, or an accusatory tone can create walls between people that take weeks, months, or even years to dismantle. In professional settings, speaking while angry can compromise credibility, tarnish reputations, and close doors that might otherwise have been open. Silence, by contrast, communicates self-control, poise, and thoughtfulness. It conveys that we are not slaves to our emotions, that we are capable of navigating challenging interactions with composure, and that we value the long-term impact of our actions over fleeting emotional release. Choosing silence also allows us the opportunity to process what triggered our anger, to analyze the situation objectively, and to determine the most constructive way forward. It gives us time to understand the root cause of our emotions, to discern between what truly matters and what is inconsequential, and to decide whether speaking will contribute to resolution or merely add fuel to the fire. There is a profound difference between reacting and responding, and silence in moments of anger bridges that gap. It transforms raw emotion into deliberate action, impulsive words into intentional communication, and potential conflict into measured resolution. Learning to remain silent when provoked is not instantaneous. It requires self-awareness, practice, and discipline. It demands that we recognize the early signs of anger, racing heart, tense muscles, heated thoughts, and consciously choose to step back. It may involve physical techniques, like taking deep breaths or walking away, as well as mental strategies, like reframing the situation, questioning the validity of our assumptions, or imagining the consequences of our words. Silence, in these moments, is both a protective barrier and a strategic advantage. It prevents the immediate escalation of tension, preserves the integrity of our message for when we do speak, and communicates to others that we are not reactive but measured, not impulsive but intentional. The moments when anger tempts us to speak are also opportunities for growth. They are tests of character, challenges that measure our ability to rise above primal instincts and choose wisdom over instinct. Every time we choose silence in the face of provocation, we reinforce self-mastery, cultivate patience, and strengthen emotional intelligence. We signal to ourselves and to others that we are capable of holding power over our reactions, that our identity is not defined by fleeting emotions, and that our voice carries weight because it is carefully measured, not carelessly released. Furthermore, silence in anger preserves relationships in ways that words often cannot. It allows space for understanding, empathy, and reconciliation. By resisting the urge to speak, we create an environment where dialogue can occur from a place of calm rather than conflict, where perspectives can be exchanged without the distortions of emotional turbulence, and where solutions can emerge without the interference of reactionary judgment. Silence also has a reflective quality. It invites us to consider not just the immediate situation, but our own patterns, triggers, and vulnerabilities. It encourages self-examination and personal responsibility. We begin to understand what provokes us, why it does, and how best to navigate similar circumstances in the future. In essence, silence in the face of anger is a form of mastery over the self. It transforms a potentially destructive moment into an opportunity for empowerment. It shifts the balance from being controlled by emotion to being guided by principle, from being a participant in chaos to being an architect of our own responses. Choosing silence when anger rises is not an absence of voice. It is a deliberate, conscious, and powerful choice that shapes our interactions, defines our character, and influences the trajectory of our personal and professional lives. It is a commitment to the long term over the short term, to wisdom over impulsivity, and to peace over conflict. It is the understanding that words, once spoken, carry consequences far beyond the moment of utterance, and that true strength often lies not in verbal expression, but in thoughtful restraint. By mastering the art of silence in moments of anger, we not only protect ourselves and those around us, but we cultivate a presence that commands respect, fosters trust, and demonstrates integrity. The power of silence is amplified precisely when it is tested by the fire of emotion, when it is chosen in the face of provocation, and when it replaces reaction with intention. Anger may rise like a tidal wave, threatening to sweep us into regret and destruction, but silence, chosen deliberately, allows us to ride the wave without being drowned by it, to navigate the storm without losing our course, and to emerge on the other side with clarity, composure, and control. Gossip is one of the most dangerous and subtle forms of communication in human interaction. It creeps into conversations quietly, often disguised as concerned advice or even casual observation. Yet beneath its seemingly harmless surface, gossip has the power to destroy reputations, sow division, and manipulate perceptions. When faced with gossip or rumors, the instinct to respond is strong. We may feel compelled to defend ourselves, to correct misinformation, to clarify the truth, or even to retaliate against the source. But responding to gossip is rarely straightforward, and more often than not, it escalates the situation rather than resolving it. Silence, in these moments, becomes not just a strategy, but a form of protection, a deliberate choice to preserve dignity, maintain integrity, and avoid entanglement in narratives that are not ours to control. Engaging with gossip implies acknowledgement, and acknowledgement can be mistaken for validation. By remaining silent, we deny the rumor the power it seeks. We refuse to participate in the amplification of unverified information, and we prevent the cycle of speculation from gaining momentum. In essence, silence transforms us from targets into observers, from participants into witnesses, and from reactors into masters of our own narrative. Gossip often thrives on emotional reactions. It is designed to provoke, to incite anger, jealousy, defensiveness, or embarrassment. When we respond impulsively, we fuel the very machinery of rumor, providing it with energy and attention. Silence, however, starves gossip of its fuel. It removes the emotional gratification for those spreading it and prevents it from gaining credibility in the eyes of others. Choosing silence requires self-discipline because our first instinct is often to defend ourselves or those we care about. But true wisdom lies in recognizing that not every attack, accusation, or distortion deserves a response. Some words, once spoken, can escalate misunderstandings or even create conflicts that were never intended. In professional environments, engaging with gossip can undermine authority, diminish respect, and entangle us in politics that distract from our goals. In personal settings, reacting to rumors can damage relationships, erode trust, and create unnecessary tension. Silence, in contrast, demonstrates confidence and composure. It communicates that we are not swayed by petty chatter, that our identity does not depend on the opinions of others, and that we value truth over reaction. By choosing silence, we protect not only our reputation but also our mental and emotional well-being. Another aspect of gossip is its contagious nature. Once we speak, even in defense, we risk contributing to the spread of information that may be incomplete, misinterpreted, or false. Silence ensures that we do not become unwilling participants in a cycle that could harm ourselves or others. It allows us to observe, analyze, and determine the best course of action without succumbing to the pressure of immediate reaction. Silence also creates space for perspective. In the heat of gossip, emotions run high, judgment is clouded, and decisions can be impulsive. By remaining quiet, we allow ourselves time to understand the source, the intent, and the potential consequences. We gain clarity about whether the rumor deserves attention at all or whether it will fade on its own. There is a subtle power in the act of not responding. When others seek to draw us into drama through gossip, our silence can unsettle them. It signals that we are in control, that we are not vulnerable to manipulation, and that we choose our battles wisely. This measured restraint earns respect, not only from those observing the situation, but also from ourselves as we reinforce the value of self-control and integrity. Furthermore, silence in the face of gossip allows us to maintain our moral high ground. Engaging in rumor, even to defend oneself, can compromise our ethical standards, blurring the line between truth and slander. Silence preserves our principles, protecting our character from being tainted by the petty conflicts of others. In a world where gossip is inevitable, mastering the art of silence is not avoidance, it is strategy. It is the understanding that the most potent response is often not verbal, but behavioral. How we live, how we act, and the consistency of our character communicate far more than words ever could. Over time, this approach builds credibility that no rumor can erode, trust that no gossip can shake, and reputation that no whisper can tarnish. Silence also allows for reflection on the motives behind the gossip. By stepping back, we can consider why someone is spreading rumors, what insecurities or intentions drive them, and how best to navigate interactions with them. This reflection provides insight, enabling us to respond thoughtfully if engagement becomes necessary, rather than reacting impulsively and perpetuating harm. In personal development, choosing silence in the face of gossip cultivates patience, emotional intelligence, and inner peace. It trains the mind to prioritize long-term stability over short-term satisfaction, to resist the urge for immediate vindication, and to maintain calm in a world that often thrives on chaos. Silence in these moments is also an act of compassion, paradoxically. By not engaging, we deny the gossip the power to escalate conflict, we protect others from being dragged into unnecessary drama, and we allow situations to resolve without further harm. It is a choice to rise above pettiness, to maintain clarity, and to focus on what truly matters. The consequences of failing to remain silent can be severe. Words spoken in defense of oneself can be misinterpreted, twisted, or remembered selectively, turning a small issue into a major conflict. Silence prevents this amplification, giving us control over how and when we choose to communicate. In summary, choosing silence when faced with gossip or rumors is not passive. It is an active, deliberate, and powerful choice. It preserves integrity, prevents unnecessary conflict, and demonstrates emotional mastery. It allows us to observe without entanglement, to respond without impulsivity, and to maintain dignity when others seek to provoke or manipulate. It is a strategy that protects our mental and emotional well-being, safeguards our relationships, and reinforces the power of character over words. Silence in these moments is a conscious assertion of control, a demonstration that we are not governed by the whims of others, and a commitment to responding from wisdom rather than emotion. By mastering this practice, we cultivate a presence that commands respect, fosters trust, and signals to the world that our voice carries weight, not because it is reactive, but because it is measured, intentional, and grounded in principle. It is the art of knowing that the most powerful responses are often those not spoken, that restraint can achieve what words cannot, and that silence, chosen wisely, is a force that protects, empowers, and defines us. Manipulation and provocation are subtle weapons that people wield with precision, often disguised as friendly advice, teasing, or even concern. They test the limits of our patience, our perception, and our self-control. The goal of a manipulator is simple: to elicit a reaction, to bend us to their will, to control the narrative, or to shake our confidence. Provocation, on the other hand, is designed to trigger an emotional response, to tempt us into impulsive words or actions that we may later regret. The moment someone attempts to manipulate or provoke us is a critical crossroads. It is the instant when our choices define not just the outcome of the interaction, but also the trajectory of our personal power and emotional well-being. Choosing silence in these moments is one of the most powerful acts of self-preservation and strategic thinking. When faced with manipulation, speaking without forethought often plays into the manipulator's hands. Each word, each defensive gesture, each reactive emotion can be twisted, used against us, or misrepresented to create guilt, doubt, or confusion. Silence, in contrast, disarms the manipulator. It removes the fuel they seek and denies them the satisfaction of eliciting a response. In this quiet, the power dynamic shifts. The manipulator may try harder, but the person who remains silent holds control because they are guided by principle rather than by emotion. Provocation relies on impulsive reactions. It is designed to make us feel justified in saying what we are thinking without the filter of wisdom. When provoked, we often want to defend ourselves, assert dominance, or humiliate the other person. But these reactions rarely achieve the desired outcome. Instead, they escalate conflict, damage reputations, and compromise our emotional stability. Silence is not submission, it is mastery over our impulses. It is the ability to recognize the bait, to step back, and to refuse to be drawn into a trap. In choosing silence, We allow ourselves the space to evaluate the situation, to consider the motives of the other person, and to plan a response that serves our long-term interests rather than our short-term emotions. Silence is also a form of protection. Manipulators often seek to provoke others to extract concessions, create confusion, or gain leverage. By remaining silent, we prevent them from gathering information, exploiting weaknesses, or using our words as ammunition. Silence safeguards our mental and emotional boundaries, ensuring that we are not drawn into battles that serve someone else's agenda. Furthermore, silence demonstrates strength. In a world where people equate speaking with power, choosing not to speak can be an unexpected display of authority. It signals that we are not easily swayed, that we are not reactive, and that our sense of self is not dependent on the approval or disapproval of others. Manipulators and provocateurs often underestimate the power of restraint. They assume that their actions will generate a predictable reaction, that we will play the game according to their rules. Silence disrupts that expectation. It forces them to reconsider their tactics, to question their approach, and to realize that their control is limited when we maintain composure. Silence also allows for thoughtful response. When we are not reacting in the heat of the moment, we can observe, analyze, and plan strategically. We can identify patterns in the manipulator's behavior, anticipate their tactics, and respond in a way that protects our interests without compromising our values. It provides clarity, perspective, and the ability to act from strength rather than from vulnerability. In addition, silence communicates discernment. It tells the world, and the manipulator in particular, that we are not naive, that we are aware of attempts to control or provoke us, and that we do not give power to those who seek to manipulate. This form of non-verbal communication often speaks louder than words. It creates an aura of authority, patience, and intelligence that can deter future attempts at manipulation or provocation. Choosing silence is also an act of emotional intelligence. It requires recognizing triggers, controlling impulses, and prioritizing long-term outcomes over immediate reactions. It is the conscious decision to protect our peace, preserve our dignity, and maintain control over our responses. In moments of provocation, our instinct may be to retaliate, but retaliation often prolongs the conflict and escalates tension. Silence, however, can diffuse the situation. It prevents escalation, minimizes unnecessary confrontation, and allows us to maintain composure while others exhaust themselves trying to elicit a response. Silence can also be a teaching tool. By refusing to react, we model self-control and restraint, setting a standard for how interactions should occur. It subtly communicates to others that respect, patience, and thoughtfulness are valued, and that attempts to manipulate or provoke are neither effective nor acceptable. Moreover, silence provides a protective buffer for our mental health. Engaging with provocateurs and manipulators can be emotionally draining, causing stress, anxiety, and frustration. By choosing silence, we conserve our energy, maintain emotional balance, and prevent ourselves from being drawn into toxic cycles that can harm our well-being. In personal relationships, silence in response to manipulation or provocation fosters healthier dynamics. It reduces conflict, encourages accountability, and allows space for reflection. It teaches others that attempts to control or provoke will not succeed, thereby promoting mutual respect and understanding. Silence is also strategic in professional settings. Responding impulsively to provocation or manipulation can compromise credibility, damage relationships, and create unnecessary tension. Silence ensures that we maintain professionalism, protect our reputation, and navigate workplace challenges with intelligence and poise. It allows us to choose the right moment, tone, and words if engagement is necessary, rather than reacting instinctively and potentially undermining our position. Ultimately, choosing silence in the face of manipulation or provocation is an act of empowerment. It is a conscious decision to prioritize control, integrity, and wisdom over impulsive reactions. It allows us to maintain composure, protect our boundaries, and respond from a place of strength rather than vulnerability. Silence becomes a tool of self-preservation, a weapon of discernment, and a mark of emotional mastery. By mastering this principle, we not only neutralize the power of manipulators and provocateurs, but also cultivate a presence that commands respect, inspires confidence, and demonstrates that true power lies not in reaction, but in deliberate, thoughtful, and controlled action. Silence, chosen deliberately, transforms potential conflict into an opportunity for growth, understanding, and strategic advantage. It teaches us that our power is not in words spoken impulsively, but in the wisdom to know when silence speaks louder than any argument could. One of the most dangerous impulses we face is the urge to speak when we do not have all the facts. In a world overflowing with information, opinions, and assumptions, it is all too easy to react, comment, or judge without truly understanding the full scope of a situation. Yet speaking without knowledge is a trap, one that can damage reputations, relationships, and credibility in ways that are difficult, if not impossible, to repair. When we act on incomplete information, we risk spreading falsehoods, perpetuating misunderstandings, and making decisions that are counterproductive or harmful. Silence, in these moments, becomes not only a shield, but also a strategy, a demonstration of wisdom that distinguishes the impulsive from the disciplined, the thoughtless from the discerning. To speak without knowing is to gamble with consequences we may not anticipate. We may think we are clarifying, helping, or contributing, but in reality, we are projecting assumptions, conjectures, or interpretations that may be entirely inaccurate. The words we release in such circumstances can be misquoted, misremembered, or deliberately twisted, transforming an innocent statement into a source of conflict or embarrassment. Choosing silence prevents this risk. It allows us the time to gather facts, understand context, and form an opinion grounded in reality rather than speculation. In essence, silence in the absence of complete knowledge is a demonstration of intellectual humility, a recognition that our understanding is limited, that the world is complex, and that wisdom demands patience, observation, and verification before expression. In personal interactions, speaking without full knowledge often leads to misunderstandings, resentment, and conflict. We may unintentionally offend someone, misrepresent a situation, or appear presumptuous, all of which erode trust and credibility. Silence, by contrast, communicates thoughtfulness and respect. It signals that we value accuracy over reaction, insight over impulse, and understanding over the need to be heard. It allows relationships to be navigated with care, reducing the risk of unnecessary friction. Professionally, the consequences of speaking without knowledge can be even more severe. Decisions made or statements issued without sufficient information can compromise projects, mislead colleagues, or damage reputations. Silence ensures that we do not commit errors publicly or professionally, that we do not mislead others, and that our contributions are based on verified understanding rather than conjecture. Silence also allows time for investigation, reflection, and critical thinking. When we pause instead of speaking immediately, we create space to analyze the situation, verify facts, consult reliable sources, and consider multiple perspectives. This deliberation leads to more informed, effective, and strategic communication. It prevents the regret and embarrassment that often accompany hasty words spoken without a foundation of truth. Moreover, silence in these moments is a demonstration of self-discipline. The urge to contribute, to voice an opinion, or to assert authority is powerful, particularly when we feel pressured by social dynamics, professional expectations, or personal pride. Choosing silence requires resisting that impulse, prioritizing accuracy over ego, and exercising restraint in the face of temptation. In doing so, we cultivate self-control, patience, and credibility, qualities that are universally respected and that distinguish leaders from followers, thinkers from reactors, and wise individuals from the impulsive. Silence also protects us from being used by others. When we speak without knowledge, we may inadvertently support agendas, spread misinformation, or reinforce biases that we do not fully understand. Silence allows us to avoid becoming a pawn in someone else's strategy, a vehicle for misunderstanding, or a participant in conflicts that we do not fully comprehend. It is a safeguard that preserves autonomy and judgment. There is also a profound psychological benefit to choosing silence in these moments. Speaking prematurely can trigger anxiety, defensiveness, and self-doubt, especially if we are later corrected or proven wrong. Silence prevents the internal conflict that arises from hasty, uninformed statements. It allows us to maintain confidence, composure, and clarity while continuing to gather the knowledge necessary for effective engagement. Silence communicates credibility and gravitas to others. When we refrain from speaking without full understanding, people recognize that we are deliberate, discerning, and thoughtful. Our words, when finally spoken, carry weight because they are grounded in knowledge rather than impulse. This careful approach fosters respect and trust in both personal and professional relationships. Choosing silence also demonstrates humility and maturity. It reflects an understanding that no single person possesses all the answers, that information can be incomplete or misleading, and that wisdom often requires listening, observation, and learning before expression. This humility is a mark of emotional intelligence and a foundation for meaningful dialogue and decision-making. Furthermore, silence allows us to separate what we know from what we believe or assume. It encourages critical thinking and discernment, ensuring that our contributions are accurate, relevant, and constructive. This approach prevents the dissemination of misinformation and reinforces the value of truth in communication. Silence is a tool of empowerment. By withholding words until we are fully informed, we retain control over our narrative, protect our reputation, and enhance the impact of our eventual contribution. It allows us to speak with authority, clarity, and precision rather than being compelled to retract, clarify, or apologize for statements made in haste. In complex situations, the temptation to comment, advise, or assert an opinion can be overwhelming. But silence provides the necessary buffer to assess, analyze, and prepare. It transforms potential missteps into strategic advantage, impulsive speech into intentional communication, and uncertainty into informed confidence. Choosing silence when we do not have full knowledge is also a demonstration of patience and long-term thinking. It prioritizes outcomes over immediate satisfaction, accuracy over ego, and wisdom over the compulsion to be heard. It recognizes that the value of our words is determined not by the volume or speed with which they are spoken, but by their substance, relevance, and truthfulness. Ultimately, silence in the absence of full knowledge is a principle that safeguards integrity, cultivates credibility, and strengthens personal and professional relationships. It allows us to navigate uncertainty with composure, to respond with insight rather than assumption, and to contribute meaningfully rather than react impulsively. It transforms the act of speaking from a reflexive response into a deliberate, powerful tool that reflects discernment, maturity, and wisdom. By mastering the discipline of silence, when we lack complete understanding, we protect ourselves from error, preserve the trust of others, and establish a standard of thoughtful, informed, and responsible communication that elevates our presence, our influence, and our impact. Silence, chosen wisely, becomes a mark of strength, a shield against folly, and a pathway to clarity, respect, and authority in a world too often dominated by impulsive words and shallow assumptions.